tell me when.
We are. Should be.
We're started. We started.
Let's see if I go. I don't see anybody yet. Oh, there's one person. Let's see who we got. Hey, those of you that have joined us, can you guys hear me okay? Just put a comment down. Also, if you've joined us, shoot a comment down in the comment section, just saying hello if you would. There it is. Hey, Joe, how are you, man? Hey, by the way, Joe, I don't know if you saw our flash special today, and I'm also, Joe, going to be using one of those new frames. So, hey, Eddie, good to see you. And Terry, good to see you guys. I'm glad to. Really appreciate all you guys joining me all these different weeks. And yeah, Joe, if you want to take advantage of that flash special, you can email me or shoot me a text, either way. I think I've got 4 of them left, so. All right, looks like I got about 11 people here. If those of you that are just joining us, if you guys would just, you can always put a question down in the comment section, but just shoot me down in the comments a quick hello. Just let me know that you're here. So, but we'll go ahead and get started. So for today. You guys probably saw the event that we had put together. One of the biggest questions that I get over the course of my time with Express Screen has been how to print white ink, or the biggest frustration that I hear from customers is how to print white ink. And so what I want to do today is we will expose a couple of screens using our exposure units, but I want to give you guys some techniques, some tips, some tricks to be able to print white ink and be successful with it. So we're going to start out with, like, the first half of this is just going to be focused on solid images, or like a vector image, and how to print that, what to look for, what to do, what not to do, those types of things. And then we will go about the second half. I'm going to print a halftone image using our exposure units and showing you how easy that is, showing you how to set all that up and whatnot. So without further ado, let's get started. So you guys may be able to see here on my my computer screen, I've got just the word staff, and so I'm gonna, with the GoCo Pro 100 here, I'm just gonna click print. I'm going to change my page size here to letter. Oops, I need to go landscape. Alright, and I'm just going to print that directly to the screen. So the size frame that I'm using with this one, with this image here, is our 13 by 16 metal frame, the black frame with the metal clamps. If you guys have seen any of our videos of the GoCo Pro 100, you guys have seen this frame before. But I've got some other frames for the GoCo Pro. If you haven't seen our newest video, the new GoCo Pro frame, I've got one of those set up as well. And we're going to print all these different frames. They all have staff in them already. I've already done some prep. And I'll explain what each frame is and which machine it works on and all of that. So, hey Craig, good to see you. And Tracy, thanks for joining us from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Send me some chocolate. So what's happening, if you guys don't know about our exposure system, I've sent my image where, you know, the staff is in black, send it to the machine, and there's a thermal print head inside the machine. And that thermal print head, it heats up wherever my image is, and our mesh is pre-coated. So this side of the mesh that's facing you guys has a coating on it that is heat sensitive. So I'm just going to take that and apply that down to my frame. That thermal print head inside the machine, like I said, it heats up wherever my image is black and will remove that coating and therefore open my screen. So in a matter of minutes, I've got a fully exposed screen that's ready to print. So we just put our black frame together here. I've got my set of clamps. Oh, I also, hey Sarah, my sister's on here today. My mom is actually not able to join us this week, believe it or not. She had a complete knee replacement yesterday, so she's actually in the process of getting out of the hospital right now. So everything went well. So she said she'd come back and watch it later on. But just like that, I've got my frame. It's ready to go. So let's go over to the press now. And I've got, like I said, I've got several different types of our frames set up. So the first one I'm going to print here is going to be the this black frame. Just so you guys can see, get an idea of printing black or white ink here. So just going to lock this in. And at the end of the session today, I'm going to be talking about different types of white inks. The ink that I'm using in the video here, or to print with, is our Express White. We've had it for years. It's a great, just all-round white ink. So, where's my? There they are. Bring this in a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm actually printing on the back side, and these are large shirt platens here. Just printing on the back side of my garment. Roll my off contact up. And so this image, this staff image, is actually something that I have printed personally for several bars and restaurants here in Winston. And you know, it's very easy to be able to print. Now, the one thing that I will say about any ink, really, is before you go and print any ink, but specifically white, you want to make sure that you have stirred up this ink really well. A lot of ink companies will actually call it shearing the ink, but you want to stir that up because that's going to change that viscosity level, make it very viscous. As you guys can see there, this is a really creamy ink, prints really nicely. I also, before I had started the video, I had actually set it on top of our conveyor dryer at the other end of the room, and as the dryer was heating up, the radiant heat was also helping that ink just kind of loosen it up a little bit. So I'm going to take my squeegee here, come across it. So there you can see I've got my first print. With white ink, whenever I'm doing a solid image like this, I always want to flash dry this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this around over to this side. Hopefully my cameraman can get that for me. And this is a flash dryer or a spot dryer. And what it does, there's an element underneath here and it's hot. Obviously you guys can probably hear it. But it has an element that is just like an element that's in a dryer. And the purpose of it is just to dry that ink or cure that ink to touch. I'm not fully curing the ink this way. All I'm doing is I'm just drying it to the touch, just so I have no ink that's coming off of my hand. And so now I can come back with the same screen. It's going to fall in the same spot. Go over that one more time, just like that. And there, oh, I got a little bleed out. I'm actually getting too much ink through there. But there you can see in the middle, you've got a much brighter image as far as your white ink. You're always going to want, on a solid image, something like this, you're always going to want to print, flash, and print. Okay? So this is one of our GoCo Pro frames. I have then another one here. This is our new GoCo Pro frame, which is our, I call it our screen door frame. And the screen door frame, what it does is it actually uses little gasket material around the edges here, and it will allow you to be able to lock in that mesh. Like I said, if you guys haven't seen it, there's actually a video out on our YouTube site as well as on Facebook showing how to assemble this that I put together this week. Another technique that would be very helpful whenever you're printing a solid image is what's called a flood stroke. There are times when I will do a flood stroke, there's times where I won't, but essentially a flood stroke is my screen is going to be in an upward position, and I'm going to come straight back across that screen. Might need a little bit more ink there. Grab some of this ink off of here. There you go. But what I'm doing is I'm essentially filling all those holes in the screen of ink. Then I can bring my screen down, take this down a little bit, just like that, and I can go over it, and what I'm doing now is I'm pressing all of that ink through at once. Just like that. I'm trying to do this kind of one-handed, but there we go. And I'm getting a lot of ink through there. That should not happen. So this ink is actually almost too thin for what I'm looking to do. But you can see here, you can still see some of that shirt through there, so I still want to flash dry that. Okay. Now, let's move over one more screen here. I have, let me take this one off. I'm going to set it over here. So, move over to another screen. So this screen here is for our My Screen machine. If you guys have seen that before, we've got, it does an image that's about 8 inches wide by about 10 inches long. So I'm actually going to have to print this one because of this frame. I've got too wide of a squeegee. I need a little bit smaller squeegee, but give you an idea there. Set that up there. Again, you can see how, here I only hit that once. Here I hit that twice. So that's one of the things with printing white ink that you're going to see is you want that to be consistent. If you find that you're getting this, like I can see a little curve in this F here. If you see that curve, or where part of my F is lighter than the rest of my image, I know I have inconsistent ink laydown, and the only way to really get, to combat that is I need to go back over this and get a little bit more ink on here. So the only way to really combat that is I'm going to go back over it, just like that, and hopefully be able to lay down more of a consistent laydown. So you can see it's much more consistent there. Again, I would flash dry that. Normal flash time, I've got my flash dryer about 1 inch or so off of my platen. Normal flash time is of what I use is going to be about the same time it would take me to print my next shirt. So there, if you guys can see on my fingers, I've got some white ink there. That means that this is not fully flash dried. I do not want to fully cure that ink, because what will happen is if I fully cure my first layer and then I'm laying another layer of ink on top, and that first layer is already cured, it's not going to bond to the second layer, and then I'm going to see whenever I go to wash it out, or wash the garment, I may see some issues of ink coming off. So this one, I'll show you again the flood stroke. We're just going to go straight across it just like that. Fill up all of the holes, bring it down onto the shirt. Go straight across it. So there is a good print of our My Screen frame there. So now, let's see, is this going to allow me? No, it's going to overlap. All right, so let's pull this off. And like I said, I'm using large shirt platens on this. This 6.4 that we have here is it's actually one of our used 6.4s that we have available. So if anybody is looking for a great price on a press, we've got this 6.4 here. The price I've got on it is about $21.95. But it would also have standard, you can get standard size platens to put on there. Alright. So this frame here is one of the frames that we can use with our QS2536 or our QS200. It's a large frame. We actually use a frame stretcher to be able to stretch the mesh and glue it to this frame. This is actually one of our original frames that we had and have had for our larger thermal screen making process. So I will show you from here, taking the flood technique, kind of how I would probably print this if I were printing this directly onto the screen making process. So I will show you from here, taking the flood technique, kind of how I would probably print this if I were printing this directly onto the shirt. Take my squeegee, go over the image, just make sure all those holes are filled up, and I want to clear that screen, okay? So that way I'm getting a good amount of ink, or clearing all of that ink out of the screen. I'm going to flash dry that, and I'll show you here in a second on this next pull what it looks like to not clear a screen. A lot of times with customers, what I will hear about is, they'll call me and they're saying, hey, I'm printing my white ink and I'm getting really rough prints. 9 times out of 10, gosh, that's a little hot. 9 times out of 10, what that happens to be is the ink is not getting cleared completely out of the screen. So if I don't clear this screen of ink, so I'm going to try and I'm going to press down a little bit harder on my left hand than on my right. So what you can see, my arm, or the squeegee went over the entire image, but you can see here that the TAFF is much brighter than the S is, and that is because my S still has pretty much all of that ink still in there. All right, and that's a pretty solid, fact that I didn't clear that out. A lot of times you'll see where it will look a lot more blotchy. You'll get a lot more peaks or valleys, rough print or almost sandpaper print down onto the actual print itself. So you always want to make sure that when you go and you clear that screen, that I'm able to see through where my image is, okay? Now, one of the techniques as far as how to be successful clearing the screen is the angle of the squeegee. So if you guys have talked to me before, you've probably heard that I'll tell you need to have at least 45-degree angle on your squeegee in order to get a good print. Let me grab another shirt here. You definitely want to make sure that you've got a really good angle when you are printing. So, just load my shirt on here real quick. The way that I have always explained this, got a extra squeegee here. So the way that I've always explained this is our squeegee blades form a right angle. Okay, so there's an edge right here on the squeegee blade. I do not want to use this flat side of the squeegee. I don't want to use that flat side of the squeegee, and I don't want to use this flat side of the squeegee. What I really want to use is this edge right here. So if that's a 90-degree angle, half of 90 is going to be 45. 45 degrees is about the angle that you want to start. However, I will say with printing white ink, that may change a little bit on you, okay? And what I mean by that is depending on the thickness of your ink, you may want to go a little bit more vertical with it. So, I do not want, and I see a lot of people do this, they'll pull the squeegee, no matter what color ink it is, and have their hands very close to the mesh. You don't want to have that. You also don't want to have your hands fully vertical either. If I were at about a 45-degree angle, that's going to allow that ink to shear through the screen. If I go a little bit higher to about a 60-degree angle on a thicker ink, that's just going to help you to be able to clear that screen out. So here's about a 60-degree angle, and I'm just going back across. Now, again, you can see in the screen itself, there's still ink in that screen. That means I didn't fully clear it. My first print of the screen is going to be that way. Okay? First time I'm putting ink through a screen, 9 times out of 10, it's going to look something like that. So when I first put ink through a screen, I will actually go over it a couple of different times just to make sure that it's fully cleared out of that image. And there you've got that print. We'll take our flash dryer, throw it around on that. And then we'll come back on it. Also, with our screens, you also don't want to necessarily go from a flash dryer and come right back and print right away. Especially if you've built heat up in the platen, that can cause issues as far as getting heat into the screen. So go across it 2 more times there, just like that. And there I've got a good and bright print of staff. So those are a couple of different techniques as far as printing something that's solid or a vector image. Honestly, printing white, I tell people quite often, if you can print white ink, you can pretty much print anything. And so if you can get this type of a technique, then the next thing that I'm going to show you of halftones will come very easily for you. But this takes a little bit of practice. I've been practicing and printing white and screen printing for many years, and so they've got it just took me a little bit of time in practice of just going over and over to print it. So all right, so I'm done with these screens, and I know I showed this last week, but I'm going to show it to you again. This is my cleanup. I just got a knife here, and if I'm not going to save this screen, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it out and toss it away. Throw that in the trash, and I could do that for any of these screens. This one has some tape on the back. I'm just cutting right through the tape, coming right across the bottom. You can use a knife, scissors, razor blade, pretty much anything sharp to be able to cut this mesh out. If I really wanted to, I could actually take it, run it through the dryer, the mesh that I'm cutting out of these. I could run that through the dryer and get a solid solid waste and then throw that away. But just for ease of sake today, I'm just going to cut them out and just throw them into the trash. Okay. There's that one. Got a little ink on me. Do another one here. All right. And the last one I've got here is a GoTo frame. All right, so we've got all of these taken care of. Now what we'll do is we're going to go back over to the other side here, and I want to talk real quick about just different types of white inks, show you guys a couple of examples here, and we'll maybe hit a couple of questions here. Let's see. So real quick, Joe, should the ink be thinner when doing something with a halftone? Here's the thing, white ink being thin is not necessarily a good thing. What I mean by that is if you have white ink and it's really thin, you're not going to have the opacity necessarily to be able to cover, let's say, a black garment. Throw this away real fast. So you want to make sure that you've got a thick enough ink or an opaque enough ink to be able to cover like what you saw, black shirts. Okay, so no, Joe, a thinner ink isn't necessarily going to be better on something like a halftone. However, and you're going to see, we're going to do a halftone here in just a second. I've got my production staff doing a reset for me real fast. And so they, you're going to see the halftones and the fact that I don't actually flash dry them. The more ink that I try to get through the screen, the more dot gain that I can have, and therefore those dots will spread and I'll lose some of the detail. So, Tammy Terry, how are you? Good to see you. Hope everything's good up in the great state of Ohio. Your squeegees are flat. There is not a 90-degree angle. Not sure what you mean by that. There should be some sort of, up one side, short little side, and down. But if anything, shoot myself or Jay a photograph and let us see them, and we can try and help you out with that. So what I want to do real quick, let's go over here. Grab a quick sip here. We've actually laid out a lot of different examples of items that we have either we've printed or some of our customers have printed over the years using white ink. So here you guys can see I've got just a koozie. It's just a basic can koozie and printed with white ink. Here I've got a bank bag, and it's just a kind of that vinyl-y type of a pleather almost, printed with a white. And that was actually printed, I think that's actually a water-based or like a air-dry type of an ink. We have some other items here, just basic t-shirts. We also have, this is a pretty neat one here. It's a circuit board. So this was sent to us by our manufacturer. So in Japan, where they make a bunch of boards, if you guys can see, this one's actually some sort of a Sony board. But this is a computer chip board, and what they do is they go in and where the diodes should be, they'll actually screen print that using our mesh. Now they're using a higher mesh count, so the they can maintain those really small, fine numbers and letters and things like that. So they would take this board here. Then this is actually 3 separate boards, and they would then weld the actual diodes to the front and the back and all your connections for that board. So, but you can do something like this where you've actually got 2 colors with a white ink. You could actually use that as a white underbase even, where you're underbasing all of that gold, the Rebel gold. There you could actually do that all with white underneath it, and then print your white on top. So you'd actually print white twice, and then print your color on top of the white, and that's called a white underbase. Here's another one that was done by one of our customers over in Tennessee, and it's got just white ink, and that one's actually like a 3 color, I believe, if I remember correctly, him telling me how he did it. And like I just said, we're actually going to be transitioning over to our halftones. And so what we're going to do, I'll show you guys here a couple of different halftone images that we have. These are ones, many of you guys may have seen these that we've done at our trade shows. We have the Arnold picture here. We're actually going to be doing that one today. Our lion, Batman, a cheetah or leopard, cars, Joker, and all of these photographs here, okay, because of our digital process, or our digital screen making process, all of these images are nothing more than just halftone images. I'm sorry, not halftone, raster images. They are not vector. So, like the Arnold picture here that we're going to be using, in my computer, it is actually just a JPEG image. The old man here, this is actually, I think Jay had talked to a guy at a trade show, and there's actually a photographer that goes around and he will photograph, out in California, he'll photograph homeless people, and he comes up with these great photographs. I don't know if it can be seen in the video, but there's actually a reflection there in the eyes that you can see. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go and transition a little bit into how to do halftone images. What I want to do and talk about with a halftone image is the fact that sometimes you have to invert the image. So let me come over here, and I will these over a little bit. I'm going to transition my laptop there into my other image. So when we actually grabbed the Arnold image from the internet, this is what it looked like. You can see it's got the black background on it, and this is actually more of a representation of what I want it to look like when I'm actually printing it onto the to the shirt. So I've got, like I said, my great production staff has done a little bit of a set change for me over at the press. So I've got the same frames that we just did. I actually have them already set up with the photograph here the correct way. With our GoPro Pro, this one here, what I'm going to do is I am going to print this as it is with that black background on it. And the reason that I'm doing that is I want to show you guys what exactly it's going to look like if I were to just take this image here and print it to the shirt. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to look like a negative photograph. Okay? And if you guys haven't done so already and you've joined us maybe a little bit late, just shoot me a hello or a question just so I know that you're here. And let me just check the press here. Okay, everything's good there. And by the way, those of you that have said hello or commented, you'll get 10% off next. Great time to just say hello to me. Let me know you're out there. I know we've tried to talk to a lot of our customers throughout all of this, but you know, it's always great to hear from everybody. Alex, how are you, man? Good to see you. I actually sent you an email back yesterday afternoon, I guess. But Alex says, we spoke briefly on doing halftones with the My Screen. You said I need to invert beforehand. I believe I did. But once you bring it up in the screen making, it scans it differently. Okay, so Alex, what I talked about, or what I meant with the My Screen, is you want to create the halftone dot with the My Screen specifically, not with the GoCo Pro 100 and not with the QS 200, but specifically with the My Screen. We have to make those halftone dots before you put it into the screen making program. Whatever you put into that screen making program, or whatever it looks like, is what it's going to expose like. So if you don't have those dots already there, they're not going to automatically show up with the My Screen, unfortunately. That is not built into that program. There are different programs out there. In fact, our really good friend in the UK, Derek, he actually has on his website, he has a specified program. I think it's like $10, and you go out there and it'll actually create the halftone dots for you as well. I will actually go through and we'll have Corel Draw. A lot of times will create the halftone for me, and I'll take that and put that over into the screen making program. So, and I know I've said it before, but I am going to eventually make make a video just on halftones with the My Screen. So, Tracy, yes. After the live stream is over, it always saves it onto our Facebook site or our Facebook page, so you can always go back. You know, you can watch the ones that we've had in the past. I think this is about our 4th or 5th one that we've done. So you can always go back and check them out at a later time. Jasmine, good to see you. Don't worry, we actually have several of us here in the office that have set alarms in the morning and slept through them. So, no worries, it happens to all of us. And Alex, if you have other questions too, feel free, you can always shoot me an email. Vince, in doing halftones, can you resize the picture, or do you have to leave it at its original size? Obviously, we know, like we've already kind of talked about, it is a raster image, so therefore it's not scalable. That's the biggest difference between a vector and a raster image. And so it's not overly scalable. However, you know, if you're using a higher resolution image, you should be okay. You know, with halftones, with any of our systems, it's kind of that old adage, trash in, trash out, or garbage in, garbage out type of deal. So therefore, you want to have, you know, the highest resolution image that you can get is going to give you the best halftones that you can possibly get. So, can you resize it? Yes. So for instance, Vince, like the image that I'm doing of Arnie here, the sample that you saw that we got hanging up over there is much larger than what I'm actually printing today. So, all right, so I've got my GoCo Pro 100 frame put together. I'm also going to expose this onto a using the QS 2536. So this is what it actually would look like if it were inverted. Go back. Let me go to the right page here. All right, so if I click on this and in Corel Draw under Effects, Transform, and it says, says Invert Colors. So that's obviously what you guys saw on the GoCo Pro. So I want to, so this would be what I get from, Google Images or a picture from a customer, something like that. So what I would want to do, and Joe, if you're still on here, this is what you did with your picture. If you guys saw on Facebook or on our Instagram, I posted a picture that my good buddy Joe did here just recently, where he got a photograph and he had to invert it, and by inverting it, he was able to create the proper look as far as on the actual garment itself. So let me just make sure I got the right size frame here, which I do. And we're going to print. So what happens, and the reason why I want to invert this is because by inverting this image, where I see black or dark is what's actually going to expose in the mesh itself. My mom did make it on. And so the 2536 here, it just gives you kind of a outside look, I guess. The GoCo Pro 100 is obviously all contained inside. But with this machine, if you guys haven't seen any of our demo videos, there's an 18-inch thermal print head that's actually underneath, on the carriage underneath the mesh. There's a roller along the top that's just holding the mesh and the print head together. So this arm is slowly moving this direction. And what it's doing is, again, where you see the darkness in the image, it is removing that coating of the mesh itself. So if you guys were here, you can very faintly see the picture of Arnold here. So I don't know if you guys can, so like there's his cigar, the nose is here, eyes are here. If you can pick that up on the, sometimes you got to kind of have the light correct for you, but you'll get to see it once we print it here. Okay, and while that's happening, I'm going to take just my GoCo Pro frame here, the one that I just exposed. I'm just going to put it here into my press. And lock it in. Now, one of the other things that I did not talk about with the solid images is what's called off contact. All right, so with any of my screens personally, I like using off contact. What I mean by that is that's the separation between the screen and the shirt. When I pull the squeegee back across the screen, I want that screen to pop back up off of my shirt. I don't want it laying straight down onto the shirt. Because there's nowhere for the ink to go. And specifically with my white ink, if I've got a really tacky white ink, that can cause issues trying to get it to clear out of my screen. So I want to have some sort of off contact. I don't want to be too high where I'm pressing down really, really hard, but I just want a little bit of separation there. Depending on the thickness of your shirt can also be the difference in the amount of off contact. So like, here I'm just doing basic t-shirts with a sweatshirt, let's say. I'm probably going to have a little bit more off contact just because that sweatshirt is much thicker, okay? So, got that one locked in. Let's now take my other frame and let's lock it into a screen here. Just make sure I'm on the platen. And that's another real quick tip for you guys. Anytime you do an image, no matter which machine or what type of a screen that you're creating, you always want to make sure that your image size can fit on the platens that you have. So, these platens here are large shirt platens. for our presses. It's 16 by 18. I wouldn't want to try to do like a 20 by 20 image on this platen. Obviously, nothing there to print. All right, so first thing I want to print, again, we've got, I'm going to print all the correct sizes first. So this is my screen frame that we've done, and get my off contact up out of the way here. So Alex, what we did is for this screen, if you're hopefully still on here, is we just used our Corel Draw to create the right size dot, or a dot pattern. And Jay was actually the one that put this together, so he can possibly explain a little bit easier of what exactly he did with this image. I can only kind of make a guesstimate, but so what we'll do, I need to actually slide my platen out a little bit so I'm not printing right up on the neck. That's another little tip for you guys. Every time that you have a job, you're probably always going to be moving your platens in order to make sure that you're printing in the correct spot. I know a lot of people that I talk to, they always want to move the image to match up to the platen, but the platens move for a reason, so just always make sure that you're adjusting your platen. And then obviously, if this were a job, I'd go around, measure how far my platen is from the my little bracket here, you know, this spacing, and just make all my platens the same. So just another little tip for you. So we'll go over that. So this gives me a little bit of a bigger dot pattern. Okay. Just like that. But you can still see, I mean, there's definitely some detail in there. We could even fine tune that dot probably down a little bit further with the My Screen. But the My Screen, like I said in some of the videos that we've done, the My Screen itself, it has, you know, a DPI of about 200 DPI. So the detail you're going to get from a My Screen is going to be a little bit less than our GoCo Pro 100 or the 2536 or even the 200. So that's one of them. This is another. This is our GoCo Pro 100 frame. Let's see where my image is here. And again, first time I'm putting ink through the screen, I'm always going to probably go over it twice. But that gives you an idea of the amount of detail that I can get out of a GoCo Pro. Alright, and the GoCo Pro gives me 600 DPI output resolution. Okay? So let me put this one over here. And let's move on to some of our bigger images here. Slide this around. I'm going to leave the inverted one to the last, just so you guys can kind of see what the differences are here. Again, I need to move platen. Okay. And then once I'm done printing these, again, I can do the same type of a cleanup where I'm just cutting them out. I figure I'll make Woody do that later. But this is QS200 or the GoCo Pro 2536. Alright, so you can see that one. And then let's go, and that's just with our glue frame, as I call it. So now this is our screw frame. This is actually the frame that comes with, or comes in our package, kind of base in the package with the 2536 or the 200. It's probably, to me, it's my favorite frame. It's easy to put together, pretty quick. You know, starting out, you may be, maybe 5 minutes putting it together, but as you get better at it, you can be upwards to about 3 minutes. So, go over this. So this is the QS2536, which has 1200 DPI there. So I'm actually going to get a little bit more detail out of the 2536 that I would from the 100 or the QS200. So it's just essentially the 2536 puts one dot where two dots, or I'm sorry, puts two dots where one dot could be. And then finally, what do we got left? Finally, let's show you what it would look like if I did not invert the image. So this is the GoPro Pro 100 frame that I put together. And I'm going to grab Squeegee. Grab a little ink off of this one. So now, if you guys remember back when actual cameras, physical cameras with rolls of film in them, and you'd go to the Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Eckerd, whatever store you wanted to go to the photo lab, and they would get your pictures exposed. You'd get those strips of negatives that then you could go back and have pictures created on. That is what this is going to look like. And also another one of my favorite new toys that we have. If you guys haven't seen this, this is our squeegee holder here. And I didn't realize this till today, but it actually fits in the middle of the 6-color. And so I can have all my squeegees, I could have them all sitting there, because as anyone in my office can attest to, I hate cleaning squeegees. So the other thing that I want to show you guys, and we're going to be probably doing some sort of a product highlight on this here pretty soon, is our cleanup cards. And these cleanup cards, I'll show you how these work. You just take the cleanup card just like that, swipe all that ink off of there rather than using a palette knife if you didn't have a clean palette knife available. And just take the cleanup card just like that, swipe all that ink off of there rather than using a palette knife if you didn't have a clean palette knife available. And just like that, you've cleaned off most of that ink, and you can then just go back and wipe it off. So, and because this white is somewhat runny, I want to go ahead and just go across this here. Alright, so I think I've stalled enough. Hopefully I've built a little bit of your suspense. But here is, that's what a negative image would look like. And this is not inverted. All the other images that I've just printed are inverted. Excuse me. And so therefore, whenever I have an image that has like that black background, like what we saw with the Arnold original, where it had the black box, I want to invert those images so I don't end up with something like this. So essentially, if you think back to math class, a negative plus a negative equals a positive. So a negative from the screen or from the computer to the screen itself is going to give you a positive looking image on your actual press. So if you guys have obviously more questions about inverting images, you can always reach me here in the office. The last thing that I want to do, and we'll grab a couple more questions here, is I want to talk about, and yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them down here in the bottom or in the comments section, and be more than happy to answer them live for you. But a lot of times everybody has this misconception that there is one ink that's going to be good for anything. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with white. It doesn't work that way even with colored ink either. So what I want to do is I want to go over real quick some of the white inks that we carry here. If you guys don't know, we're a Union Ink distributor. And so we carry most of the white plastisol inks from Union. But the first one I want to talk about, and this is the one that I've printed for years, it's our Express White. It's an all-purpose white. And so one of the things that, one of the reasons, I guess, the best way to put it, one of the reasons that you can't necessarily use the same white on all of your different garments is because of the different types of fabric. You know, you've got your cotton, you've got your 50-50 blends, you've got your poly blends, and each of those fabrics is going to take ink a little bit differently. And so, or there, you know, and you guys have probably heard this term before. It's called dye migration. Dye migration is mostly seen whenever there is a poly part of that shirt, whether it's 100% or 50-50 or even a tri-blend. You'll see dye migration can possibly happen. Dye migration will only happen when the color of your fabric is darker than the ink you're putting on top of it. So therefore, if you are printing, like, let's say a black polyester shirt and you're putting white ink on it, you want to make sure that you've got an ink that has the dye migration blocker in it, either an ingredient or it's specifically made for poly shirts. The Express White is an all-purpose white, and why we call it an all-purpose white is because it already has that dye migration blocker in there. I have printed this ink on cotton, I've printed it on 50-50s, I've printed it on 100% poly, and I've not had issues with it dye migrating. The other reason I like the Express White is by stirring, like I talked about, which you always want to do. By stirring up that ink real well, it becomes very, very creamy. Even creamier if I put it on top of the dryer for a couple of minutes as it's heating up. So that is that's kind of my go-to, and has been for many years. Then a couple of years ago, and part of the reason is also because I was never a fan of the old school, what I call the old school white inks from Union Ink. They were very thick, very tacky. I joke, but it's partially true. I could actually put a hole into drywall and be able to spackle with some of the old school white inks. And so therefore, you know, that's why I chose to use the Express White. But then Union began to realize, and I think a lot of the ink companies, honestly, out there began to realize that there's these tri-blends that are coming onto the market. There are, you know, dye sublimated jerseys, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, became very popular for your college baseball teams to have the sleeves that were dye sub with like the camo print on them. Or even your football jerseys, or, you know, a lot of that stuff became sublimated now. And so with that, the fact that they're sublimated, anything, you know, you get that garment over 300, 310 degrees, if that, you're going to reactivate those sublimation gases or dyes, and they're going to start coming back out of the fabric. So therefore, Union they came out with what's called the Stellar White Ink series, and I've been a big fan of these. The first one here is the Lunar Cotton White. So obviously it's going to be good on cotton garments. It's going to give you a really good laydown. One of the biggest things with a cotton t-shirt that you're going to find is called fibrillation. And what that means is the fibers on the shirt are standing up. If those fibers don't get laid down by the ink deposit, they're going to stand up, and you're going to see them through the ink. And so they came up with the Lunar Cotton White because it's a good thick white ink, good opacity, and it really helps to combat or lay those fibers down. Then they also came out, same type, is the Mercury low bleed and the Eclipse low bleed. And I personally don't see a big difference between the two. They're both low bleed inks. I will say the Mercury is probably more popular with our customers that have tried it and used it. But the Eclipse I've used. The Eclipse has a tendency to be a little bit tackier, in my opinion. But they are both low bleed. Roughly, if I remember correctly, they're roughly the same cure temperature and whatnot. But they have that low bleed ingredient in there, so that then you can use them on like your poly blends, 50-50 or 100% polys. And the last thing they did with the Stellar White ink series is their Cosmic Poly White. Their Cosmic Poly White is specifically made for those dye sub garments. So this ink can actually cure under 300 degrees. People are like, well, why wouldn't I use this all the time? Well, let's go back to cotton. Cotton, if I had a cotton shirt that had the fibers sticking up, or I'm getting that fibrillation, this ink necessarily won't be the greatest of inks to be able to lay those fibers down. Yeah, it's going to cure faster, but it may not be opaque enough or thick enough to be able to lay the fibers down. So those are the Stellar White ink series there, and those are really popular. They've taken off. They've been around now probably 2 to 3 years, maybe a little bit more than that. So a couple more whites that we have in stock. We have our Athletic White. Our Athletic White is exactly what it says. A lot of times in the Union Ink color chart, their Athletic series is actually, they call it a nylon series. You can add Nylabond to this and be able to print on nylon garments and things like that. When I first started with Express Screen, the Athletic was actually called Athletic Gloss. So this actually has a little bit of a more glossier look to it. And then the last one, and this is, in all honesty, this is my least favorite ink. It's called Diamond White. The reason that I'm not a fan of Diamond White is because it is probably one of the tackiest and thickest inks that we carry. However, I've got several customers that use automatics. The Diamond White has a tendency to be able to stand up to use on an automatic, whereas my Cosmic Poly or some of the other whites that I have may be too thin to be able to use on an automatic. So that just some things to keep in mind and to take into account if you are looking at different white inks. These inks here are just the inks from Union. Obviously there's a lot of different inks out there. I tell people if I were to take a survey of, let's say, 50 screen printers, I'd probably end up with 50 different white inks that people like. What I have found in my experience over the years is that with white ink, it's honestly what you can learn to use. There is no, everybody has to use Express White. No, it's not that way, in my opinion. In my opinion, I found that I can print Express White probably the best. However, we've had other people that have worked here that they didn't really like Express White. They thought it was too thick or too tacky, or they just couldn't get it to clear out of the screen. It all depends on the technique, and just that repetition. And honestly, the only way that I can really tell you how to print white ink is take the tips and tricks that I've given you and try them out for yourself. See what works, see what doesn't. Kind of take what you can use, leave what you can't, and kind of create your own technique. That's what I've done. I'm not perfect with it. You'll find that some people, like you guys saw, I pull the squeegee. Some people will push. I'm not personally a fan of pushing just because I have a tendency to be too rough on the screen pushing away from me. But I've got customers with our screens that will use a push method. It all just depends on what technique that you can come up with. There is no, this is how it's done type of thing. So I think I've about covered everything that I wanted to cover. Are there any other questions out there from you guys? Also, if you guys, anyone that's watching, if you have a tip or a trick for printing white ink or printing in general that makes you successful, drop it in the comments, and I'll give you 10% for that as well. If you haven't already said hello, obviously, but drop me a tip or a trick. You know, the benefit of me working with customers is, yes, I get to teach you guys, but I also learn from you guys as well. If you guys haven't seen, our monthly special this month is if you send us a picture or video of something that you're printing or that you have printed during this this COVID crisis, we'll give you 10% off the order. If you have a tip or a trick in your shop that you use, whether it's printing, cleaning up, curing inks, doesn't matter, a tip or a trick, send that to me or send it through a message on our Facebook, because that's part of the reason why I put that on there, was because I want to see what else I may not know. You know, there's always room for improvement, always room to learn, and I figure you guys are the ones that are on the front lines every day as far as screen printing, so no better way for me to learn some more stuff and try some things out than getting some ideas from you guys. So so yeah, any other questions out there? And also, if you enjoyed the video, give it a little like for me as well. Always like to see the thumbs up. And we will we'll be doing more videos over the course of next week. You know, using our My Screen couch series. But also, if there is a video or something that you would like to see done, shoot us an email, shoot us a comment or a message, something like that, and we'll try to make that happen for you. You know, we're here for you guys. If it wasn't for, you know, our viewers, our customers, you know, our future prospects or future customers, we wouldn't be here. So we greatly appreciate all of you guys that have been tuning into all of our videos, watching us, liking us, giving us the encouragement through all this, because we have definitely racked our brains enough to come up with content. And so if there's a piece of content that you guys want to see, let us know. I do have, there's some driver videos, installation videos that I still need to post, but so those are definitely coming out here in the next week. But we'll be doing another one. White water-based ink. Alex, I knew you would probably say that. I think actually Woody has some white water-based ink with him in the My Screen, so we'll see what we can maybe come up with here in the next week. Maybe I can grab that from him and do something here in-house. So, but yeah, I know you've been struggling with that, and hopefully the plastisol can be kind of that fix for you, because I don't think you would have any issues with the plastisol there in your apartment. So, but we'll be doing another Facebook Live next week. What the topic is going to be, I don't exactly know yet. We'll definitely come up with something that's hopefully captivating, have some fun with you guys, be educational for you. So, greatly appreciate everybody tuning in this week for spending an hour with me, getting to spend an hour on a Friday afternoon and have fun with you guys. Make 4 prints all over the shirt. Okay. All right, Alex. I'll do what I can as far as setting that up and videoing that. I may just do that just as a video and then just send that to you. So, but greatly appreciate everybody. I want to thank my cameraman Woody.
Woo!
My production guy down at the other room, Ted.
Woo!
For helping us out to put this on. And hope everybody has a great weekend. If you didn't know, and obviously we're in North Carolina, but if you didn't know, NASCAR's coming back on Sunday, so make sure you watch. But everybody have a great weekend.